Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm live. Back Sundays, 4 to 6 p.m. Thank you for joining us. Final segment. Countdown for me to a whole bunch of hard work. Doing the radio is fun. Making films when you're getting down to the wire is grueling, but it's going to be one hell of a documentary. And I tell you, we will sell no wine until it's time, as the immortal Orson Welles would say. Okay, I'm not going to have time to read this whole thing, but I'm going to try to read some of it. It's Common Sense 2009, Huffington Post. We got it up on Infowars.com. And I will tell you who woke this guy up. And I don't agree with everything he does or says, but he reaches a lot of people and was a big Democratic Party operative. And that's Larry Flint. The American government, which was once called our government, has been taken over by Wall Street, the mega corporations and the super rich. Yes, Mr. Flynn, it's called the New World Order, but he says that later. That's what's incredible. They are the ones who decide our fate. It is this group of powerful elites, the people which President Franklin D. Roosevelt called economic royalists, who choose our elected officials, indeed our very form of government. Both Democrat and Republicans dance to the tune of their corporate masters. In America, corporations do not control the government. In America, corporations are the government. Yeah, global governance is run by private corporations. This was never more obvious than with the Wall Street bailout, whereby the very corporations that caused the collapse of our economy were rewarded with taxpayer dollars. So arrogant, so smug were they that without a moment's hesitation, they took our money, yours and mine, to pay their executives multi-million-dollar bonuses. Yeah, 23.7 trillion, Larry. Something they continue doing to this very day. They have no shame. They don't care what you think about them. Henry Kissinger refers to us as useless eaters. And again, I happen to know the editor of Hustler, and I'm gonna try to get him on, because it's interesting that Larry Flint of all people's a fan, and now talking about eugenics. The article goes into that. This is wild, folks. This is a big supporter of the Democratic Party. I mean, an icon out there. But you say we have elected a candidate of change, to which I respond, do these words of President Obama sound like change? A culture of irresponsibility took root from Wall Street to Washington to Main Street. There it is, right there. We are Main Street. We must accept, according to our president, share the blame. He went on to say, a regulatory regime basically created in the wake of the 20th century economic crisis, the Great Depression, was overwhelmed by the speed, scope, and sophistication of a 21st century global economy. Flint goes on to say, this is nonsense. The reason Wall Street was able to game the system the way it did, knowing that they would become rich at the expense of the American people, oh yes, they most certainly knew that, was because the financial elite had bribed our legislators to roll back the protections enacted after the stock market crash of 1929. And that's exactly what happened. And then he goes into how Republicans and Democrats were part of it, how Bill Clinton's the one that got rid of it, and Bush went along with it, and then Obama comes in and blames the American people. Congress gutted the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated commercial lending banks from investment banks, and passed the Commodity Futures Modernization Act, which allowed the self-regulation with no oversight. The Securities and Exchange Commission subsequently revisited and revised its rules to allow for even less oversight. And we've all seen how well that worked out. To date, no serious legislation has been offered by the Obama administration to correct these problems. Instead, Obama wants to increase the oversight and power of the Federal Reserve. Never mind that it already had significant oversight and power before our most recent economic meltdown, yet failed to take action. Well, yeah, because it's a holding company for the very same banks that did it. Never mind that the Fed is not a government agency, but a cartel of private bankers that cannot be held accountable by Washington. Whatever the Fed does with these supposed new oversight powers will be behind closed doors. Mr. Flint, it's a new bank of the world, so they can run the whole planet and run these scams. Obama's failure to act sends one message loud and clear. He cannot stand up to the powerful Wall Street interests that supplied the bulk of his campaign money for the 2008 election, nor, for that matter, can Congress for much the same reason. Consider what multi-billionaire banker David Rockefeller wrote in his 2002 memoirs. We cover this in Truth Rising. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interest of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalist, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it. Just like you're proud of funding Hitler, huh? Read Rockefeller's words again. He actually admits to working against the best interest of the United States. And Larry Flint's article is now making big headlines around the country. And he goes on. I haven't even read half of it. Need more? Here's what Rockefeller said in '94 at a UN dinner. We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the New World Order. They're gaming us. Our country has been stolen from us. Journalist Matt Taibbi, writing in Rolling Stone, notes that esteemed economist John Kenneth Galbraith laid the 1929 crash at the feet of the banking giant Goldman Sachs. Taibbi goes on to say that Goldman Sachs has been behind every other major economic downturn as well, including the most recent one. As if that wasn't enough, Goldman Sachs even had a hand in pushing gas prices up to past $4 a gallon. The problem with the bankers is long-standing. Here's what one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, had to say about them. Before I read the Thomas Jefferson quote, I want to read the Taibbi quote. This Matt Taibbi guy wrote a book attacking me and others about the New World Order a few years ago, and then now acts like he's the leader of us, but kind of whitewashes it. So he's kind of like the Glenn Beck of the left. Watch out for him. The problem with bankers is long-standing. Here's what one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, had to say about them. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issuance of their currency, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. And then it goes on. We all know that the first American Revolution officially began in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence. Less well known as the single strongest motivating factor for revolution was the colonists' attempt to free themselves from the Bank of England. But how many of you know that the Second Revolution, referred to by historians as the Shays Rebellion, it took place in 1886 to 1887, and once again, the banks were the cause, because they make up fiat money and buy everything up and send mercenaries they hire to throw you out of your house. Continuing with what he has to say. This time, they were putting the screws to America's farmers. Daniel Shays was the farmer in western Massachusetts. Like many other farmers of the day, he was being driven into bankruptcy by the bankers' predatory lending practices. Sounds familiar? Rallying other farmers to his side, Shays led his rebels in an attack on the courts and the local armory. The rebellion itself failed, but the message had been sent. The bankers and the politicians who supported them ultimately backed off. As Thomas Jefferson famously quipped in regard to the insurrection, a little rebellion now and then is a good thing. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And that's the same thing happened at the Alamo. They killed those 186 people, but out of that came the victory for the state and the freedom we enjoy today over that despotism Mexico. And they can smash me flatter than a pancake. It only makes us rise up like a phoenix 1,000